Welcome, everyone, to Season 6 of LexTalk podcast. We are so excited to be back.
Absolutely. Great to be kicking off a new season.
This season, we're diving deep into research and academia in linguistics. And this is for all of you, our fantastic listeners, followers, everyone in Thailand and beyond who's passionate about English.
That's right. And for our first deep dive, we thought we'd tackle something really foundational, key linguistic theories.
Yeah, the ones that every English teacher, every ELT professional really ought to know.
Because understanding why we do things in the classroom, not just what we do, makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just theory for theory's sake. It gives you that solid foundation, helps you understand how language learning actually, well, happens.
Exactly. It helps you make much more informed choices about your teaching practices. Think of them as different lenses, really.
Lenses to see the learning process more clearly. Okay, I like that.
So we'll walk through some of the big ones today.
Sounds great. And hey, before we jump in, just a quick reminder to follow LexTalk everywhere. We're on our website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify.
Yep. Just search for @LexTalk Podcast. We've got loads planned for this season.
Okay, so theories. Where do we even begin? What's the sort of historical starting point?
Well, a logical place to start is often with behaviorism.
Oh, okay. Skinner and all that.
Exactly. B.F. Skinner is the big name here. The core idea, and you probably encounter this, is that language is learned like any other behavior.
Through stimulus and response, forming habits.
Precisely. It's about imitation, repetition, positive reinforcement for correct utterances, and importantly, correction of errors.
So errors are just bad habits that need fixing.
That was the thinking, yes. And you still see its influence, don't you?
Oh, definitely. Things like substitution drills, pattern practice, maybe audiolingual methods.
Absolutely. Repeating dialogues, drilling sentence structures that all come straight from behaviorist principles. Foundational, but maybe not the whole picture.
Right, because then came a pretty major shift in thinking.
The massive shift, yeah. Towards innatism.
And that brings us to Noam Chomsky.
The man himself. Chomsky argued, quite radically at the time, that we're actually born with an innate capacity for language. It's not a blank slate.
So it's biologically built in, like hardwired.
That's the idea. He proposed this concept of universal grammar, or UG.
Universal grammar, meaning there are underlying principles common to all human languages, deep down.
Exactly. An underlying structure that our brains are sort of pre-programmed to recognize and use.
Okay, so if that's true, what does it mean for teaching? We can't just drill habits into people if they already have this internal system, right?
Well, it suggests that learners need more than just rote practice. They need rich, meaningful exposure to the language.
Ah, so lots of input, authentic stuff.
Precisely. Things like stories, conversations, real communication. That kind of input helps activate that innate language acquisition device, as Chomsky called it. Less focus on just drilling, more on understanding and experiencing the language.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving beyond just behavior, what comes next? Thinking about the mind itself.
You got it. That leads us into cognitive theories. Here, the focus really zooms in on the internal mental processes.
So, like, how our brains actually process the language we hear or read.
Exactly. Things like attention. What do learners actually notice? Memory, how is language stored and retrieved? And problem solving, figuring out the rules.
So learning English becomes less about habits or innate modules and more about actively figuring things out, like cracking a code.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Learners are seen as actively constructing their understanding, forming hypotheses about how the language works based on the input they get, and then testing those hypotheses.
Right, so the emphasis is on making the learning meaningful, helping learners notice patterns.
Definitely. It implies that teaching isn't just about telling students the rules, but facilitating their own discovery process, guiding their attention, helping them reflect.
Letting them make connections themselves.
Yes, and maybe self-correcting based on further input or interaction.
Which kind of leads nicely into the social aspect, doesn't it? Because we don't learn language in a vacuum.
Not at all. And that's the core idea behind sociocultural theory, heavily influenced by Lev Vygotsky.
Vygotsky, right. Language is a social tool.
Fundamentally, it's not just in our heads, it's between people.
Yeah.
It's how we communicate, connect, express identity, learn about the world.
And he had that famous concept, the ZPD.
The zone of proximal development. Crucial for teachers. It's that space between what a learner can already do independently and what they can achieve with guidance and support.
The learning sweet spot.
Exactly. And the support we provide within that zone is often called scaffolding.
Like helping them climb higher than they could alone.
Precisely. So in the classroom, this points towards things like pair work, group activities, peer support, teacher guidance on tasks, learning through interaction.
Okay, so interaction is key. What about the actual input itself? Someone focused specifically on that, didn't they?
Oh yes, Stephen Krashen and his input hypothesis, hugely influential in ELT.
Right, the I+1 guy.
That's the one. Krashen argued that we acquire language, meaning we learn it subconsciously, mainly in one way, by understanding messages, by receiving comprehensible input.
Input that's just slightly beyond our current level. The I is our current level, and the +1 is the next step.
Exactly. You need to understand most of it, but there should be something new in there to push you forward.
So the focus shouldn't be explicitly on grammar, especially at first, more on just understanding.
That's his argument, yes. Acquisition happens when the focus is on meaning, not form. And crucially, he stressed the importance of a low effective filter.
Meaning low anxiety, feeling comfortable.
Yeah, don't stress learners out, don't pressure them to speak before they're ready, avoid excessive error correction early on, create a welcoming environment.
So lots of reading, listening to stories, watching videos, stuff students can mostly follow, respecting the silent periods some learners have.
Exactly. Lots of rich, comprehensible input in a low-stress setting.
But what about actually using the language? Input is one thing, but surely talking and writing matter too.
Absolutely. And that's where other theories come in, building on or complementing Krashen, like the interaction hypothesis.
Okay, who's behind that one?
Michael Long, primarily. He argued that interaction itself facilitates acquisition. When you're talking to someone, you often have to negotiate meaning.
Like asking for clarification,
Mhm.
rephrasing things, checking you understood.
Yes. Those moments when communication breaks down slightly and you work together to fix it, Long suggested that's prime time for learning. You notice gaps in your own language, or you notice how the other person says something.
Interaction forces you to pay attention to the language itself.
In a way, yeah. It makes the input more comprehensible or highlights areas you need to work on.
And then there's the idea that actually producing language helps too.
Right. That's Merrill Swain's output hypothesis.
Output. So speaking and writing.
Exactly. Swain argued that just understanding input isn't enough for full fluency and accuracy. Producing output, trying to speak or write coherently and correctly, forces you to process the language more deeply. Well, when you try to say something complex, you have to retrieve words, figure out grammar, structure your thoughts. It makes you notice what you don't know how to say, or it helps you test your hypotheses about rules. It pushes your internal system.
Oh, so tasks that require students to actually speak or write to get something done are important.
Very important. Designing activities where they have to express themselves, convey meaning, maybe solve a problem together.
Okay, this is great. We've covered quite a few different angles. How does this all kind of come together in modern teaching approaches?
Well, many current approaches, like constructivist and communicative language teaching, kind of synthesize these ideas.
Right, the focus is on communication, on actually using English.
Exactly. Learning is seen as an active process. Learners construct meaning through engaging in real-world, or at least realistic tasks. It's very student-centered.
Developing functional skills, being able to actually do things with the language.
That's the goal. So teaching methods that fit here include things like project-based learning, task-based language teaching.
Maybe role plays, simulations.
Definitely. Activities where students aren't just practicing grammar points in isolation, but using English to achieve a communicative purpose. Planning a trip, debating an issue, presenting findings, collaborating on a project.
Using language meaningfully.
That's the essence of it. Learning by doing, learning through communication.
Wow, okay. So, wrapping up this first deep dive of the season, we've journeyed from behaviorism through innatism, cognitive views, social factors, input, interaction, output, all the way to communicative approaches.
It's quite a landscape. And the key takeaway, I think, for everyone listening, especially educators in Thailand, is that these aren't just dusty old theories.
No, they really do underpin everything we do. They help us understand how our students learn and therefore how we can teach more effectively.
And it's not about picking one theory and sticking to it rigidly. It's about understanding the insights each one offers. A good teacher probably draws on elements from several of these, consciously or unconsciously.
A balanced perspective. That makes sense.
Right. Recognizing the value of comprehensible input, but also the need for interaction and output, understanding the cognitive processes involved, and never forgetting the social context.
It really gives you a richer understanding of the whole process.
Hopefully.
So what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, in our next deep dive, episode 2, we're going to get even more practical. We'll explore the direct links between linguistic research building on these theories and actual classroom applications.
Bridging that gap, theory into practice.
Exactly. Concrete strategies, techniques, activities that stem from this research, stuff you can hopefully try out in your own teaching contexts.
Fantastic. Sounds like essential listening for all ELT professionals.
We certainly hope so.
So make sure you join us for that, and please keep the conversation going. Follow LexTalk on all our platforms, website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, Spotify. Remember, it's at LexTalk Podcast.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time.
Let's talk, let's learn, let's Lex talk.